Today on Freedom Alive, business owners across America are standing together to push back against government lockdowns and closures. Welcome to Freedom Alive. I'm Steve Steiger. The government lockdown of businesses in America has destroyed so many jobs, so many dreams, and so much hope. According to Forbes magazine, since the onset of the pandemic, nearly 170,000 businesses have closed across our country. Sadly, more than 60% will never open again. These prolonged lockdowns have had a devastating impact on our economy, causing the owners, their staff, and suppliers to lose income and, in many cases, lose their businesses. Today, you'll meet business owner Alfie Oakes, who is standing for his constitutional rights by pushing back against this government overreach, and through an inspiring initiative is encouraging fellow business owners to do the same. Plus, my co-host, Matt Staver from Liberty Counsel, is here to tell us the latest that's going on in America in his Freedom Update. We have a great interview with Alfie Oakes today, and I'm looking forward to learning more about the movement that he started. So let's roll first to our Freedom Update.
I'm really looking forward to this interview with Alfie Oakes. Alfie Oakes, who owns a farm and also this amazing place for groceries and a restaurant in South Florida, is just one of many individuals that experienced a lot of pushback with regards to opening up the business just to survive and provide a service to the community. In fact, there are many, many businesses that have gone out of business and will never return because of the restrictions imposed at different levels across the country since March of 2020. We have been working at Liberty Counsel representing pastors and churches all over America. We have worked with over 2,000 pastors in 44 states. We've gone to the United States Supreme Court 5 times, and we've been in multiple federal courts of appeals, representing pastors and churches against various restrictions, including penalties for having church with even one person. For example, in California, that included up to a year in prison for each violation, and daily fines against these pastors' churches and even parishioners attending the church service. You may not recognize some of these restrictions or that they even continue to exist depending upon what state you're living in. For example, in Florida, where the first pastor was arrested the last Monday of March 2020. That set off a firestorm, not only in the state of Florida, but around the country and even around the world. Dr. Rodney Howard-Brown is a client of ours that we represented in this case out of Hillsborough County, Florida, where Tampa, the city of Tampa, is located. He had a church service at the very last Sunday of March, and on the very next day, in a dramatic fashion, he was arrested for having a church service that was socially distanced with incredible amounts of sanitation and health precautions implemented within the service. And as a result, he became the first pastor in America to be arrested for opening up his church, even though it was not against the executive order of the governor in the state of Florida. This was imposed by the local Hillsborough County officials. And as a result of that, we represented him, and Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, within a day and a half later, on April 1, 2020, issued a new executive order declaring attendance at churches and places of worship to be essential activity, and he overrode every local ordinance or executive order to the contrary. Thus, from April 1, 2020 until continuing, there have been no restrictions on churches and places of worship in the state of Florida. So if you live in the state of Florida, you may not recognize some of those restrictions still exist. You may have attended a church that was closed temporarily. But the problem is this is continuing to go for more than a year around the country. For example, in California, we had to go to the U.S. Supreme Court twice because California had the worst restrictions in the country. No worship for 99.9% of the population. I'm telling you, not even one person or two people could enter a church or any other place of worship for worship. We ultimately went to the Supreme Court, and twice the Supreme Court ruled in our favor. Most recently on February 6, 2021, issuing an injunction stopping the total ban. We're continuing to litigate in California because they continue to have some other unequal treatment against churches and places of worship, including attempting to ban singing and chanting, whereas Hollywood media productions are exempt. In fact, they can gather together for singing productions, but not churches and places of worship. That's discriminatory, and we won't rest until all these restrictions are ruled unconstitutional. We also represent a church in Kentucky where people were fined and they received a notice of violation and thus a mandatory quarantine for having a parking lot service on Easter Sunday. We ultimately went to the Court of Appeals and won 2 3-0 decisions there and freed up all of the churches in Kentucky. In Virginia, a pastor that has Lighthouse Fellowship Church on Palm Sunday met with 15 other people. 16 people gathered in a 293-seat sanctuary, and he received a criminal charge punishable up to 6 months in prison and a $2,500 fine. We continue to represent him. This church does not have internet. Many of the people do not have internet, so online was not an option for them. For many, this church is their only family. And we ultimately got the criminal charges dismissed. We also have a case that went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, Romanian churches in Chicago. These are people that fled communism. They're familiar with communist and Marxist closing churches, arresting pastors and Christians, and yet they face the same thing in Chicago, Illinois, where the neighborhood cars for 9 blocks were towed, where they receive threatening letters that the church is a public nuisance for having more than 10 people in their massive sanctuaries, and that they would even go to the extreme extent of even demolishing or restricting access to the church facility. We took that case to the U.S. Supreme Court twice and freed up all of the places of worship in Illinois. And there's many, many other cases like Andrew Womack Ministries in Colorado, where we litigated there on behalf of that ministry and got all of the restrictions removed on places of worship in the state of Colorado. But these restrictions remain, and we should never go down this road again. And we will make sure that our constitutional freedom to worship in our homes and in our churches continues to remain in America. No one should be faced with this decision. Do I attend church or do I go to jail? That should never be a decision that anybody in the United States of America should have to make. And at Liberty Counsel, we are dedicated to make sure that we will never go down this road again, where the government restricts places of worship. Look, Caesar does not control the church. This is the church of Jesus Christ, against which the gates of hell will not prevail.
Matt, thanks for that great update. Watching that develop over the last year, it was heartbreaking. There were so many emotions to watch that California backdrop, the tyranny, the overreach, the arbitrary nature of what was inflicted upon God's kids and the church. And I think it's now ironic that the person who initiated so much of that is ironically facing a recall potentially. Can you speak to some of that?
Yes, and this battle, by the way, Steve, as you know, is still ongoing because there are still other restrictions, but the worst of the restrictions, the total ban on worship, which in California is criminal if you violate this, 1 or more persons in a church, even in your home, and it's also come with significant fines. It's still ongoing because we still have other restrictions we need to remove, but the worst restrictions have been removed. And the amazing thing is, whether it's the West Coast with Governor Gavin Newsom or the East Coast in New York with Governor Cuomo, both of those have been very harsh to places of worship. We know about the situation in New York with regards to putting COVID positive people, unfortunately, in these nursing homes, and so many deaths occurred as a result. Both of these individuals are facing the potential end of their political career. Mm-hmm. Gavin Newsom is facing a recall because the people in California, regarding the church restrictions, regarding the business restrictions, they're saying enough is enough. Mm-hmm. We have to stop this. This is a place where the people should have a voice, and it's not a monarchy ruled by a single individual in the governor's mansion.
Mm-hmm. Matt, thanks again for that fantastic update on the churches throughout our country. Up next, we're going to move to Matt's interview with Alfie Oakes.
Well, I'm very excited about our guest, Alfie Oakes. Alfie is the president of Oakes Farms. It is the largest agribusiness in South Florida, headquartered in Collier County, Florida, which is, you're probably familiar with, Naples, Florida. So welcome, Alfie, to Freedom Alive. Tell us a little bit about what is Oakes Farm? How did it begin? I want to also get into your story about the incredible operation that you're doing now, how you're encouraging other business owners to open up the devastating impacts that have occurred because of the lockdowns nationwide, and also your experience standing up to the so-called cancel culture. So give us a little background about Oakes Farms.
Yeah, well, a lot to talk about there. I started out Oakes Farms when I was 15 years old. Actually, started selling on the roadside, and I like to say my first employee was 14 years old, still works with me. So we built an amazing team. I like to say that I've lived the American dream. And maybe when people ask me, why do you choose to come out and fight for our liberties in such a strong manner, especially when we have a lot to lose. We this past year we did 500 million in sales collectively with 3,200 employees. And
wow, that's a large operation. So you actually started out farming.
Yeah.
And then Oakes Farms, through your family, grew out of that, and that's what it has become today. 3,200 employees.
3,200 employees. Well, so I actually started out with just kind of peddling produce, and then got into farming. And I was only in farming for 3 or 4 years. I wasn't that great of a farmer at the age of 19 until 23 when I got out of it. But that was just a great life lesson. And I didn't farm for a while. Got back into it maybe about 10 years ago. But it's been the whole ride has been a blessing. We have an amazing team. My father, who was not the most successful businessman, taught me what really mattered in life, and it was who do you connect with? How are you going to be remembered? He was a man that didn't die with really any money. Didn't need a single death certificate. He didn't have a house, a car, life insurance policies, checking accounts, any of that thing. But he had 1,700 people that showed up to his funeral. Wow. And it left a huge impact on me. That what is important in this life is our integrity and how we affect all the other people that we come in contact with. That's
really the legacy that you leave behind. All the different people that you've impacted throughout your life that echoes through eternity, as I like to say it. What you do is that legacy literally echoes through eternity, not only in this life, but in eternal life as well. So this business that you have is large now, but it actually provides produce to a lot of national change, some school districts, and you also feed people. You have people that have donated to the store to actually give away food. You also have people coming from around the nation just to come to your store in Florida. Why would they come all the way around the nation just to visit your store?
Well, I like to say that our store is the happiest place in the universe, and the new store, the Seed to Table store, is we have over 600 employees there. I built the store to be a place of community. It's not just a grocery store. When I told people even 10 years ago the way that I was going to build the store was going to be without aisles, and it was going to be warm, and it was going to feel like home, and I never realized that it was going to turn into a place that was really just for patriots or conservatives, and obviously everyone is welcome. We love everyone there. Like I said, I feel like I've lived this amazing life because of what our founding fathers provided for me, the platform, and they gave everything. If you ever get a chance to watch the Paul Harvey of the founding fathers, yeah, it's amazing. Every person in school should be made to listen to it, but none of them do, of course, for the obvious reasons. But
they put everything on the line.
They put everything on the line, and I feel like it's the least that I could do, because I feel indebted every day to the people before me to uphold our liberty and Constitution.
Because you have experienced, like so many of us, the American dream.
Absolutely.
Coming from farming to this incredible business in a country that allows you the freedom to be able to achieve.
I grew up under poverty in East Fort Myers. I was in a small trailer park for a while. At one point, we had a dirt floor house with just concrete walls. I went through different, but never really felt like I was cheated. But I grew up in what would now, by today's standards, obviously be called poverty, and I was able to 100%. Capitalize on the American dream through hard work and through getting loving people, putting a good team together. I feel like a lot of the folks in Washington D.C. are not going to give us our freedoms back. We, the people, are going to have to be the ones to take our freedoms back.
And so you actually have a movement where you're bringing business owners and encourage them around the country to open up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places where businesses, like I said, 170,000 plus businesses will never see the light of day again. And that's just such a shame. All of us have seen those businesses. What are you doing to encourage people to open up?
So we had a March 1st initiative, and it went really well. We had over 4,000 emails sent to the freedom@oaksfarms.com email. And we've connected a lot. We asked a lot of attorneys and for pro bono work and things like that. And we've connected attorneys with these different businesses in different states to just feel them more empowered to open up. And it's amazing response from that, especially from I want to say a minimal amount of effort, but it's to me it's like phase one, and we're building ground, and we're going to keep pushing. It was great to see the states of Mississippi and Texas and South Dakota now coming out and making no mask mandates. So that's a huge. We're moving in the right direction. The people are finally fed up. They realize that this is insanity, and it's time to start taking our country back.
Your particular store does not require everybody to wear a mask. You have a sign that says if you have a medical reason for not wearing a mask, we're not going to ask you. So many of the people don't wear masks there.
Absolutely.
And that has ultimately, as I mentioned, brought people from around the country because it is the oasis of freedom within the oasis of freedom of Florida. So you had some people from one of the major airlines come and want to stay there. And tell us about that experience.
At least 50 people a day are coming in the store that have never been in there before from these lockdown areas. Maybe probably 8,000 people a day coming through the store. So 50 a day coming first time and they come in, and a lot of them have the masks on at first, and then they looking around and they're like, you don't need to wear the mask here. And obviously some people keep it on, but many people, this one young lady came in, we were actually filming at the store at that particular day. And she came up and gave me this huge hug and said that I had saved her life. And I said, how did I save your life? And she said, well, I live in Chicago and I've been depressed, very, very depressed for the last 3 or 4 weeks, to the point where I'd never had suicidal thoughts ever in my life, but I was that depressed. And she said, I decided that I was coming to Naples, Florida. I saw on social media what was going on in your store, and she come down to the store. She's come down for a week, and she had been in the store 4 or 5 days without running into me, without connecting to me. So this particular day she came in, and she saw me there, and she just ran up and hugged me. And I said, you know what? It's a really amazing moment here. We have the film crew here. Why don't you get on film here, and you can explain to everyone how it feels and how. Because she said that in a matter of 4 days, she was eating every meal at the store. She was coming 3 breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Because she's not able to do that in Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely. And she said that as soon as I said, would you come on camera, her happiness melted off of her face, and she got really sad. And she said, I can't do that. If someone was to see me in this store with not wearing a mask, that would be considered as something that she could get fired for. And I was really blown.
On her own personal time.
On her own personal time. On basically, I guess, her vacation.
Yeah. So, what you just shared, and thank you, Alfie, for joining us. Our guest is Alfie Oakes, and we're going to give you some contact information. But what Alfie shared about this woman who's the airline stewardess, never having suicidal thoughts before in her life, that has become very common, unfortunately, because with all of the significant lockdowns around the country, people's jobs have been threatened, they've been lost. Young people are trying to struggle with how to deal with online when the online programs aren't that helpful, or they're not that efficient, I should say. Parents are trying to struggle with their third grader doing online, but maybe they need to go to work, and how's that all going to work out? So we've seen domestic violence, we've seen child abuse escalate, we've seen alcohol consumption skyrocket. People who are recovering from alcohol or drug addiction go back into alcohol or drug consumption. Illegal and legal use of drugs has skyrocketed, which has resulted in a dramatic increase in depression and anxiety, and unfortunately, even for young people, even in the middle school age, a dramatic increase in suicide. And that's why it is so important, as this woman shared, that she came down to this store in South Florida to experience some freedom. It is time in America that we regain and recapture that American dream of freedom. God put it in our hearts, and it is so critical what you're doing, and we want to show how you can get involved in a moment.
Matt, that was an incredible story. So inspiring to hear Alfie and you speak through that. To me, it is something that really confronts all of us during this pandemic time. It's fear versus courage.
Exactly.
Right? And the blessings that come from God from choosing courage.
Yeah, and obviously no one, and Alfie didn't say this either, no one's saying that COVID's not real. Obviously, it is real. But there's a lot of fear, a lot of unnecessary fear that's associated with it. There's a lot of restrictions that, frankly, the cure, so to speak, is worse than the actual disease itself. Mm-hmm. And these lockdowns have been devastating around the country to businesses. And like I said, it's actually resulted in people ending their lives or having suicidal thoughts and other significant damaging effects. You know, with regards to Alfie, we didn't mention, Steve, that he's not had any outbreaks in his store. He has this store, it is the oasis of freedom. There's been no outbreaks. He's got over 3,200 or so employees. There's been no outbreaks in there. And nobody has died in that store. And he's got thousands of people. He said, what, 8,000 people a day that visit the store?
Yes.
Many come from around the country to experience the freedom and just the environment of this store. And so he is standing up for freedom, and that encourages others to stand up for freedom as well. And now is the time to be able to take the stand. Look, we've been in this pandemic and the restrictions in many places around the country since March, a year. Yeah. We've been actually over a year. And it is time to be able to get our lives back and take our lives back.
Sure. We all experience that. And just what Alfie has experienced. Are we going to be fearful? Or are we going to step out and trust God? And I was taken aback by the tangible blessings, but also the intangible, the family discussions, the story with his daughter and things like that. We've experienced that in our home as well. Yeah. Any thoughts?
Yeah, and we've seen that with regards to pastors all over the country. I mean, pastors, for example, we've represented pastors who have mugshots, one right in Florida. As a result of his arrest on the last Sunday of March, Governor DeSantis opened up all the places of worship in Florida on April the 1st. That was an unpleasant experience for Pastor Dr. Rodney Howard-Browne, but the impact of that was incredible. And so we've seen that same thing around the country with pastors, even churchgoers being threatened with criminal activity, punishable up to a year in prison. And if they've taken a stand, we've seen incredible stories of change and hope that have come to people who have been hopeless. And so when you take a stand and you pray about that stand, not just a stand to be rebellious, but a stand to do the right thing, to stand for freedom, to stand for your faith. You may be targeted, you may face unpleasant times, but I can tell you what, God will use those moments in incredible ways that you cannot even imagine.
Amen. For those of you at home, I hope you found this story to be tremendously inspiring. Again, the goal of Freedom Alive every week is to bring you peace, hope, and courage amidst a very, very confusing time in our country. Next on Get Involved, Matt will share great ways that you and your family can engage and make a difference. This might be a great opportunity to discuss getting involved.
Well, thank you, Steve. And what we want to do on this program is not only educate you, but give you a way to make a difference in your community, in our state, and around the country. You can go to this particular email and send information, freedom@oaksfarm.com, freedom@oaksfarm.com. That goes right to Alfie's email, and he checks that to make sure that he can respond, but he's looking for business owners and others to be able to be a part of this movement to open their businesses. You know, it's so critical, and it's very sad to see so many businesses and so many families and their dreams literally crushed all over America. The consequences are catastrophic. And so Alfie is encouraging others, and he wants to encourage you to not only patronize these kinds of businesses like Alfie's and others, there are many that are opening their businesses for operation, and some in very hostile places in the country where they face incredible opposition from state or local governments. And he also wants to encourage and network with other business owners to actually do the same thing. Stand up for America. This is our time. God birthed us for this moment. He didn't make mistakes, and he wants you to get involved. Send an email to freedom@oaksfarm.com.
Thanks again, Matt. For those of you at home, I hope you have enjoyed this life-changing story of hope, of courage. It's been amazing to see what we've talked about with Alfie Oakes. And I believe really the question today for all Americans to answer is, America, our constitutional freedoms and biblical values, are they worth fighting for? I pray you'll agree with me that the answer is emphatically yes, because it's clear we're going to have to continue to do exactly that. Fight for it, that is. Well, that's it for today. But remember that your freedoms depend on you